and trout and bass and various fish, clams. Um, and a lot of our foods and medicines grow along the banks of the river. And I remember I was probably around 7 years old or so, and I went down to visit him, and I lived and grew up in the community of Tobic, which is upriver here. And he was working on his garden, and it was around this time of year, and and he told me to go with him towards the bank of the river. And I remember him pointing across the river, because where my grandfather's home was between the two rivers, the Nagotkuk River and the Wolastoq River. So his home was at the point of those two rivers, and he said across the river, and he spoke our language fluently. He said across the river is where I used to pick all my medicines, and they used to grow there. So he described to me the various medicines that he picked, and as a 7-year-old, you know, you can't remember all the stuff that he said and so on, but he was very specific about that they used to live off the land. And one was the muskrat root, and one was nuts and berries, and various types of vegetation that grow across the river. And then he said, so they built these dams, and he said about he said during the springtime too is when the salmon used to come upriver to spawn. And he said you can hear the salmon before you can see them. He said it sounded like a freight train coming upriver. And he said that there was literally thousands and thousands of salmon used to come up and spawn. And he said he can recall as being a young boy, and his mom and dad would tell him to go down to the river and get a salmon for their meal. And he says, I didn't need a fishing rod. I didn't need a net. He said, I just used my hands. He said, there was that many salmon. He said, you can pretty much walk on their back across the river. He said you couldn't see the bottom of the river. So these are the conditions that we put ourselves in. I guess I'm not sure if it's like voluntarily or forced, but the government had built dams, and then eventually, took us off our natural lands and so on. So a part of this whole process of food sovereignty, speaking to the grandmothers, and they said we weren't gardeners per se, because we didn't plant gardens at the beginning. We just lived off the land, that food that grew naturally here. And it came back every year. And how we garden today differs on how our people used to garden, or get food from the land, because it just naturally grew. And the Three Sisters was one of our the corned beans and squash were the Three Sisters. I know the the Iroquois people, claim that it's part of their story, but it's part of our story too, to grow those and to use them as food and medicine. And speaking to the elders, a lot of times what they tell me is food is medicine. You can't differ, and you can't separate our growth of food, our intake of food as being just food, but it keeps us alive. Anything that keeps us alive, that keeps us well, is medicine. So all the food that we grow is medicine. So this whole concept of food sovereignty. Approximately 20 years ago, I was at St. Thomas, and um, Winona LaDuke, who's lives in Minnesota right now. Um, I believe she was born in California, but eventually moved to Minnesota and started her own community. And I remember, 15, 20 years ago, sitting in a Native Studies class, and then she came and she spoke about food sovereignty, and she said she's starting her own community, her own um, powered by wind and solar. And then she said, we need to get back to the land and have our people reclaim their natural way of growing food and so on. So this is kind of what really eventually triggered my mind, is that our people need to do the same thing. And 2 years ago, I went to Maine to a 4-day ceremony, and and an Orville looking horse, who's the white buffalo calf pipe carrier, was there, and and he brought his two daughters, and I got to have a chance to sit down with them at the last day. And one of his daughters was going to the University of Hawaii at the time, getting her master's, and what she was studying was food sovereignty, and what she wanted to do was eventually, with her thesis, write on and create her whole thesis surrounded around what the natural food that the Sioux people grow, and what the Sioux people um, used prior to contact. Because she said, as all indigenous nations and communities, we have the highest rate of diabetes, cancers, heart disease, and so on. So she said and this was because of our present diet. So we have to go back to our natural foods of our nations. So again, like 2 years ago, again that clear reminder of what we need to do as indigenous people is to grow what was natural to us in our own regions. And I believe around 15, 20 years ago, again, PBS had produced a film called The Native Americans. And during that film, it was like I think a 5-night documentary, and there was um, a group of I believe there were Anishinaabe people who was migrating west, and then they had a whole story of their prophecies of leaving the east, going to west, and they would actually put up a pole each night um, before they would go and rest and sleep. And if the pole would drop a certain way, they would follow the pole the next morning. So they finally reached the area of around St. Louis, Missouri, and the next morning the pole was still standing, so they knew that was the land that they would stay at. So what they eventually did at that piece of land is that they started to grow mounds, and they had a high. It almost looked like pyramids, and they put certain levels at sections as they made the mounds. So they grew food in each portion of the elevated mound. And what they realized is certain foods grow in certain climates, the atmosphere and and temperatures. So eventually, that they mastered um, growing food in certain elevations and climates and temperatures. So that was the main um, spot where nations would go each year to gather to do ceremonies and to trade. So these people mastered growing food at certain sections and certain levels and climates. So people from the north, they would give them the seeds that would grow at the higher elevation, the cooler temperatures, and the people from the south, they would give them the seeds that would grow at the lower level of the of that mound. So it all depended on where you lived at that they mastered, and they gave these seeds to these various nations. So that was a major um, place where many various nations met, and they got to learn how to plant foods and so on. So this whole concept of food sovereignty didn't start in, you know, 15, 20 years ago. It started, thousands of years ago, and our people to get back. I think we need to get back to our natural ways of how to grow our food. And I know a lot of researcher, researchers said we used, when we had like a salmon or a trout, we would use the guts and the remainder of the fish to plant within our food. When we would plant our food, we would use the fish remains or various different types of fish inside, mix it in with the earth as a natural way of reproducing the food and helping the and just to let you know, I know very little about gardening or processing food. And I just read a lot of historical stuff, how our people used to grow food. And we need to get back to our natural foods and so on. So, when I was told that this project was going to start this year, and I know Louis and Jared was going to be involved, it kind of got me really, you know, you know, it gave me hope that two of our people, one Mi'kmaq youth and one Wolastoq youth, was going to be involved in this whole process. And I think it's great that we have our people involved and for them to learn and to share with our nations and so on. So so well, for now, that's pretty much all I want to share. And then if later on that we can talk a little more. And I'd like to know who's in our whole group here. I can't see all the people, but yeah. So that's it. Uh,
So do you want to do a little round of introductions? Is that what you think, Ron? And just kind of get folks to give a little bit of background on themselves and their interests. Does that sound good?
yes, yes, please.
Okay. Well, maybe we'll call on Louis or Jared since you've already been named.
Oh, Sarah's there too. Hi, hi, Sarah. I just noticed up there, and let's look young woman there. So great.
I can start. You
Thanks,
can't see
Alexa.
me, but my name's Alexa, and I've lived in Fredericton my whole life. I have a really big passion for gardening, and I've wanted to learn how to do it like a more natural way for so long. And so I was so happy with the opportunity at Hayes Farm. And I have chickens, which is another one of my big hobbies and passions. So I hope to be a farmer someday.
Okay, I'll go. Well, yeah, my interest is exactly food sovereignty in our nation, and I really want to learn like the old ways and matching them with technologies to make them like more efficient for our eras. And yeah.
I guess I'm looking to be have food sovereignty. My mom has always talked about getting back to the traditional ways, but it didn't really hit me until I had my own kids, and now I realize the importance, like, of them to be confident in themselves, to produce their own food, to not rely on the broken system that we grew up on. I guess that's kind of what pushed me towards this direction.
So thanks, Ron, for giving me such an awesome shout out. You're awesome. Love you, man. I miss you. It's really nice to be back in Wolastoq territory to be growing stuff right now, because this is where I grew up, but the rest of my family's up north and they're kind of doing their own thing. So for me, I'm getting a bunch of different organizations in the background together, and we're trying to do more to get food to people in need right now. But on the side of tradition, it's about making sure it's what is supposed to be here ecologically, what was given in our bundle, what we're supposed to be taking care of, which is like the actual stuff that grows here, and making sure we can take care of that and give that back to people too. So besides working daily here, I'm trying to get some contact with some people I know from St. Thomas and stuff to pick up more seeds and roots and like medicines. There's even I got to get Daryl Hunter and some other people and see where I can start picking stuff and recording stuff and getting that back to some communities. That's what I'm doing.
Who's Daryl Hunter?
That's a secret.
Oh, all right.
Hi, I'm Tabby. I'm currently studying sociology, so I'm really interested in learning about new perspectives in the food system. And I've lived in Fredericton my whole life. So.
Matthew, Aldia, Eugene, Hannah.
Hi, I'm Matthew Golding. I am from St. John. I'm a Mi'kmaq person. My heritage comes from Eel Ground, or Eel River rather. Not connected to them for a number of reasons, but it was just recently that I was introduced to like my culture and ceremony, and I feel like really privileged to have you here, and I'm so grateful. And I'm really looking forward to all the things that the incorporation of Wabanaki learning that will be included in the course. I've ordered the Seven Sisters book. I haven't gotten a chance to look at the one that's on site yet because I think Jared has it. No, I'm just really excited. I finished an environment and natural resources degree recently, and that really ties in, connection to the land, and food sovereignty is definitely the direction that I hope to take with my degree.
I can go next. I'm Hannah, and I'm in the same degree as Matthew just finished. And for me, my biggest passion is education and educating like the youth. So I think that's really where I want to go with everything I'm learning in my summer experiences and in my schooling, is like helping kids like reconnect with land and just like growing up more environmentally conscious.
I'm Althea. I'm from St. Stephen, but I've been living in Montreal for the last couple of years, doing a degree in environmental sciences. And I'm just here to learn about a better way to farm and hopefully bring that back to Charlotte County, because we have a serious lack of good vegetables. Yeah.
I am Eugene. I have a degree in accounts. Then I just like farming. I like to eat fresh food. That's why I joined this program. Thank you.
Suring, are you there? You want to?
Oh, yes, yeah.
Yeah,
So,
okay.
yeah, I was just trying to wait. Hi, Chief. I think, I'm sorry, my video is not working, but I'm sure you will recognize me when you see personally. I was in the same course last year, and this year I have joined the Hayes Farm as a staff. And just a comment, like it's so good to see all the young people, like being so, like interested in growing food and, like becoming a farmer conscious. So it's really good to be part of Hayes. And thank you so much for your, like time. Thanks.
Thanks, everybody. I definitely have a couple, not so much questions, I guess, but like comments or prompts. So I don't know where you want to go with this, Ron, or how you want to deal with the rest of the time we have. We basically have until 11, so we can just have a discussion if that appeals, unless there's more presentation or specific information that you were planning on delivering.
Sure, I can speak a little bit more as like when you make your. Are you going to talk a little bit more too, or just have a couple?
I don't have anything planned for this time period. Sorry that I guess we maybe didn't give you as much information as you needed, but basically, we have time for you for another hour. So it's however you want to manage that time. If you have more that you'd like to share with us, absolutely.
Sure.
I mean, and I can certainly talk to you about the initiatives. I know that I heard you mention the kids from Chief Harold Tapir that we've had on, but there's also some other things that I can speak to as well. But I'll let you, if you have more to share, I can certainly go after you.
Okay, sure. I just want to share too that I was a student at both St. Thomas and UNB back in the early 90s, and I had the pleasure of listening to the elder and William Commanda. William Commanda is from the Maniwaki community in northern part of Quebec, and he was the last wampum belt carrier and knowledge keeper. And wampum belts, I don't know if you all know what wampum belts are, but they're made from a quahog shell, and it's white and purple. And our people made little beads. I should have brought I have some wampum belts with me, but I'll kind of describe them in a little detailed way. And our people made wampum belts to to make contracts or to make some sort of agreements between themselves and various nations, or even just a marriage contract between two clans or two families. They'd make wampum belts for treaties, various reasons why they would make wampum. But what William Commanda had, he had prophecy belts, and these prophecy belts disclosed the future of how the ancestors of our peoples perceived what was going to occur. It's the belts that he carried were really old belts that came from his great grandfather. And this one particular belt that he brought with him, he called it a prophecy belt. It was around a foot wide and around 25 feet long, and the beads aren't very large. And I was overwhelmed in just just in looking at that belt and thinking with I can see, like, because I have a friend from the Abenaki Nation who makes wampum, and it takes him around 6 minutes to make one little wampum shell with modern technology. And he has a diamond tipped drills and saws to cut wampum and water. And back, you know, many centuries ago, our people didn't have this modern technology. So I'm thinking, how did our people make these little wampums, fine, beautiful little wampum shells? And and it must have taken them years to make this huge wampum belt. But when William's grandson had carried this great big suitcase, it was before they put wheels on suitcases. So he dragged this suitcase into the room, and I thought he brought rocks or something because he couldn't even lift it. And his grandson was like 6 foot tall. I'm thinking, there's been a lot of rocks in that suitcase. But he took out this great big wampum. It was wrapped up in a large cloth, and he unraveled it and he rolled it out and he put it on the floor. And I was just amazed how large and long and wide this wampum belt was. So so what the elder William Commanda did is that he started talking about all the symbolic the items that were weaved with inside that belt, and he talked about our creation story. So each symbol defined a specific time of our peoples when they were first brought here, when they were created, and he slowly went through all the periods and the eras of our peoples living here in the East. And then eventually talked about our first he said our first treaty and our first covenant was with the land when we were born. He says we agree to live in balance and in health and in wellness with all creation. And he said, you know, and the agreement was that we would respect the earth, and as we respected the earth would provide for us. So as long as we didn't abuse the earth, we didn't abuse the water, we didn't abuse the trees, the animals, that it would respect us back and give us life. So as he went on talking about each era, each decade, each century of this life of the Wabanaki, us people of the dawn, how we would live within in this connection to the land and the earth. He said there was periods that we lost our ways, and then we got greedy and selfish, and we took more than what we really needed. So our people got sick. So eventually our people, because of their greediness and the selfishness, got sick, and a lot of them died through the process. But eventually, you know, a new plant, a new thing would be born and then grow, which would help us heal and reconnect to that land, and give us the understanding that we need the earth to live. And this occurred, according to him, numerous times, is that humans, as human as we are greedy. You know, some people are born or taught to be greedy, but eventually this whole natural way and the origin and the original teachings and the covenant with the land would always come back, because you always have a person that would be born and with this natural way of reconnecting to the land and teaching, you know, teaching our people that we have to respect the earth, we have to respect the water and all of creation. So this, according to his prophecy, this occurred numerous times within our nations. So as he went along, and it took him the whole evening to go through the whole description of the symbols on the belt, and then eventually he came to this place of a cross, and it was not a Christian cross. It was a cross that had 4 equal parts to it, and he said, eventually humanity is going to come to this crossroads, and when they get to this crossroads, they're going to have to decide which way they're going to go. And I remember because I was sitting right in the front of the of his presentation, and he pointed at me. He said, "You will see this." He said, "I'll be gone," but he said, "You'll see this in your lifetime." He said, "Humanity will have to decide, because there'll be sickness that comes to the earth, and it's going to start wiping out huge numbers of people. It's going to start to affect the water, the earth, because we are abusing her. We're polluting her veins. We're polluting the air." He says humanity is going to be awakened by huge things occurring. He says, and there's going to be a huge sickness across the world. And he said, and humanity is going to have to decide, once they get to this crossroads, which road they will take. Is it going to be the green road, or that paved road? So he said, and what will happen? He says it'll be a huge awakening, and it's going to be the young people. And he spoke of these rainbow warriors will awaken. And I'm thinking, rainbow warriors, what? Because when you're taught that warriors, this physical, aggressive person, but when you look at a rainbow, it's beautiful. So I'm thinking this new breed of humans is going to come forth, these rainbow warriors. Well, rainbow is a beautiful thing. So as he was speaking about these rainbow warriors, he says they'll be born, and they will be born with this knowledge of the ancestors. He says they'll already know what needs to be done. He says we don't have to teach them what needs to be done. We just have to steer them. As the older people, as we are, he said, you'll have to steer them in the right direction. And when they select that green path, he says that's the path of rejuvenation, rebirth, life, and he started talking about the replenishing the earth again. And so he described it as this. He said, it's like when you go to a river where there's rapids. He said, what will occur is these young rainbow warriors will come and they'll jump in that river of rapids. And at the beginning, it's going to be really rough. He says, and these rainbow warriors will be the leaders. And he says, and other people will follow and they'll jump in with them. But he said, but there'll be some that will fear the rapids and they'll stay back. And some will jump in and fear the rapids once they get in, and they'll be grabbing at the banks and trying to crawl back up, but they'll drown. And the other ones who didn't jump in will be left behind. But these rainbow warriors and the other people who follow them will be eventually come to calm, these beautiful calm waters where they can replenish the earth again. So as I was sitting there thinking, this was in 1992. This was quite a few years back. And as each year has gone by since then, our constant fight to save and protect water. 4 or 5 years ago, I was arrested for standing in front of these thumper trucks up in near the Rexton, the Chelsea Bukdug, just to help them protect water because they didn't want fracking there. And I remember standing there as I was being arrested along with some of the allies and friends. I was thinking, geez, why do we have to fight to protect, precious veins of Mother Earth? And this is just, and this is a Texas-based company who's proposing this fracking, which we knew that was going to poison the aquifers and the, shift the shale that's below our feet and create this devastation. So anyway, but all these teachings from William Commanda came back. It says, when he said that you'll have to go through these rapids, these rough times in what you have to do in protecting water and earth, but eventually you'll come to these beautiful, still, calm, beautiful waters that you'll be involved in helping to replenish the earth and protect the water and so on. So here we are right now at a very crucial point. And when this pandemic came, I'm thinking, geez, that's exactly what William Commanda spoke about in 1992, who was told to him by his great-grandfather, which was, I don't know how many years ago that would have been. So here we are, as he was sharing that beautiful prophecy teachings of that wampum belt, in the time that we're at right now is very, very crucial. And we're given the opportunity in selecting which road we're going to take. Are we going to take that green path or of prosperity within reconnecting to the earth and to life and to creation, or that paved path that's the easy way to go? So and when you spoke about the Rainbow Warriors, and then when the idle no more movement came around 3-4 years ago, again it was people from all over the world, young people, standing up and demanding that they would protect, they wanted the earth protected, they wanted the water and the air protected. And it just came back to the time in 1992, sitting there listening to the elder speak about this time now. And when he talked about this great sickness coming across and because of the selfishness of man. And here we are today. Everything that he spoke about in 1992, who was told to him by his grandfather, and which came from his great-grandfather. And William has been gone now for like 10 years. So everything that he talked about through this prophecy belt has come true. So here we sit, in Little Fredericton, talking about these food sovereignty in reconnecting to the earth, reconnecting to the land. So all this foreseeing that his great-grandfather seen has come to pass, and here we sit in wanting to produce our own food in a most natural and organic way, and sitting there and I'm thinking these aren't people think that's coincidences and so on. I believe in fate, that there's this divine time that when people meet and then when they work together, for the betterment of humanity. And and we always say, for the next 7 generations. So we're always looking forward to preserving and keeping and protecting the earth, the water, the air for our next 7 generations. And he spoke about the 8th fire, the awakening of the 8th fire. And this is the 8th fire time, where the embers from the 7th fire were kept burning. And then all of a sudden, this huge awakening of young people coming forward and getting reconnected to the old ways. And so here we are, all these, prophecies about how the earth is going to evolve and replenishing, to replenish ourselves. And we can't get, I know as hard and difficult as it is, we can't get consumed about these world leaders who are making stupid decisions, and hence the southern country below our feet. We have, the world power of the United States has a very this man who's trying to rule their country in a very, horrific way. But we can't get consumed by that. We as the little people, the ants, we have to work and to keep this life together, and so this is a really a marvelous opportunity, and a really this is that shift that William Commanda spoke of, and he's used the word shift, because we have to shift into a different time and a different space for us to save the earth. Because I'm not sure about, I know that Sarah has children, but I'm not sure about the rest of you. But we have to look for their future, and what type of future are we going to leave for them? And this is to get reconnected to the earth, and the that getting your hands dirty. And I remember as a young boy working with my mom in our garden, and she used to get me to weed the garden because I was small and short, and I could reach the earth better. But those memories are so prominent, and good thoughts that I can think back working with my mom in the garden, and seeing my grandfather have a beautiful garden, and growing up in Tobic. I'd say 95% of our homes had gardens. And this was back in the 60s and 70s. But eventually, when the grocery stores and these great big stores started to open, we again got disconnected from the land. So this is an ongoing cycle that we have to look at and go back and to learn from this, and say we have to stay connected to the land. And this is the time and space we're at right now. So, and it's a great opportunity for you all to learn, and then hopefully it starts with yourself, to be well, and to reconnect yourself to the earth, and then you teach your clan, your family members, your children, and so on. So I hope that makes sense. And that's all I want to say right now. And if somebody has a question or want to have a comment and so on, please feel free. Yeah.
Thank you, Ron, for that. It's very very touching and emotional. I guess my question is, which direction do we go in towards food sovereignty as Wolastoq people? Like, I know it's getting the foods that prior to the grocery stores and the contact to grow, but like now during these times, like what about the fish? What about the moose? What about like all that in the condition that the environment's in now?
Yeah, that's like those are big, like really big things, like talking about the dams, talking about the spraying of glyphosate in our forests are huge battles, because you have to battle the government, you got to battle companies and so on, and we can get overly consumed by those things, and I think what we need to do is concentrate on food sovereignty right now, and growing our own food, and getting to be the masters of that first, and there's people behind the scenes who are fighting against the spraying of glyphosate, who are working on hopefully someday dismantling those dams, and the only way for our salmon and various fish species are going to come back is that we have to dismantle those dams. But I think for this group that we should focus on food sovereignty and replanting our own food, our traditional foods and medicines here. I've also talked to Cecilia Brooks, who is very knowledgeable about our traditional foods here and medicines. So she's going to assist as we go on in planting like sweetgrass, muskrat root, tobacco, like our like medicines that we use for ceremonies and so on. So yeah, it like that, like the spraying of our woods, because it affects the moose and the deer. That's a pretty darn big battle there. But we do have like certain groups in New Brunswick who are battling the spraying. So hopefully that they will. And the reason why I think this province is so fixed on spraying the woods is because we have one family who controls the whole forestry here, which is the Irving, and they're creating a monoculture, which they profit from. So again, you have to battle, that family and so forth. So, but I think our main goal is for this group is to focus on food sovereignty and so on. So I hope that that's what we can do.
Is there anything that you want to see grown at Hayes, like, or is there any other community initiatives you can think of right now that need like a little bit of a helping hand in working on some of the traditional stuff?
Well, the Wolastoq Grand Council has a proposal into this, to the FREX here. The Federation exhibition is that we've been working with them. There's a plan that we're developing to create a whole community there on the green where the racetrack is. I don't know if you guys are familiar with the FREX here, but the Federation exhibition usually have activities and things going on through the year, but in the fall time they have a big fair there, and they have like an agriculture component to it, and they have a horse race section to it, which has not been going for several years now. And what the Grand Council has proposed is to put in a plan to develop that green space. And one of it is to start a garden there. And because of this pandemic, our plan is kind of paused right now. We were supposed to have a plan in by this month. And according to the city of Fredericton and the Frex, is that they're going to put this on hold for 1 year. So it kind of gives us that 1 year to develop a stronger plan to put in. We want to have a garden there for food security at that spot. We want to have immersion school, a Wolastoq immersion school for pre-K and K. I think Louis part of that plan in developing the immersion school. We want to build a teaching lodge, and we want to build eventually a Wabanaki college there. So and an archaeology building too, where we can hold all our artifacts. So this whole process and our first portion of our plan was to use that land for farming and to put organic farm there. So that's kind of been on pause because of this pandemic. So it kind of gives us a little bit more space and time to have a more concrete plan to put forward. And hopefully in the future, you all can be involved in that too. So we're still waiting on, we were supposed to plant sunflowers there starting this month. So we're still waiting on the approval from the people there, and we want to get the earth tested. Mark, who was on earlier, had gone to the Frex area and he took samples of the earth and he uplifted the earth, and he's seen a lot of worms and bugs, which is a really good sign that the earth is well, because we were kind of afraid that they might have sprayed that or used some sort of chemicals. But according to Mark in his first site, that the earth is well. So but we still need to get the earth tested though before we do. And sunflowers, according to Mark, is that it detoxifies the earth too. So sunflowers is a very good plan to do that. So, and the Native Women's Group here in New Brunswick are in the process of purchasing a beautiful piece of land out past Cambridge Narrows, and we visited there last week, and there's a whole, like there's so much land there in this near the Wolastoq Lake, and that piece of land is very fertile. So hopefully in the future, that if they do purchase that land, is that we can use all what you've all learned to go and to plant food there and plus medicine. So there's a whole the future is looking pretty darn good when we have the opportunity to use space like the Frex area on the green and the Native Women's Group, who are in the process of purchasing a beautiful piece of land. And hopefully next spring that we all can go out there and to start to plant food there and so on. So. So does anybody else have any questions or comments or views, or don't be afraid to share?
Lee Run for the all the teachings. It's really appreciated. And yeah, I don't know if I have questions or stuff, but I'd just like to say thanks.
Well, one thing I do remember my grandfather saying that said the full moon in May. He says after the full moon in May is a good time to plant. I'm not. He said because and he had this natural way of seeing things or the experiences in life that he had. He says that that's the last moon that is a possibility of frost. So, but as the climate changed since he was young, maybe it has shifted a bit because we can't. There's no consistent weather. Like it's supposed to snow on Saturday, so who knows? These this whole shift of and and I remember a couple funny stories about my grandfather. Once when I was probably in my younger teens, probably 13 or 14, I remember sitting in with him once. He said, there's going to be a day that you're going to have to buy water. And I thought that was the funniest thing that I've ever heard in my life. Buy water. And it wasn't much, probably 5 or 6 years down the road. I was playing baseball in the neighboring town, and then after the ball game, I stopped at a local convenience store, and I went back to get my soft drink, and lo and behold, I seen a bottle of water. So I bought it, and I took it right up to him. He was like probably like 90 years old then or so, and I remember walking in his house, and I put it right in front of him. He said, "What did I tell you?" So anyway, that was kind of funny that he kind of knew that the way that we were living and stuff, that we would eventually have to buy bottled water. And he did tell me once that he said um, March we get the gets like he used to be being able to predict like weather and seasons, because I remember being a young boy again. I was like 9 or 10 years old, and it was the Telegraph Journal who came up from St. John to interview him about how he knew what the weather was going to be like, winters and summers. So anyway, because I remember seeing that car in the driveway, and I went to his front window to look in, and there was a reporter there, like writing away about all but what my grandfather was saying. So after they left, I went inside. I said, "Well, what did you tell them?" He said, "I told them the biggest bullshit story that you can ever hear." He said, "Do you think I would tell them the truth?" So anyway, he just laughed about it. He said, "I'm not going to tell them the truth how I, how I predict the weather and stuff like that." But again, I recall him saying that he says the animals are acting so differently now. It's really hard to predict what the weather is going to be like and what the seasons. And he had a hard time. He says, and he wasn't. He didn't watch TV a lot, so and back in the 70s, they didn't really show global news, so he didn't really know what was going on in various countries, but he knew just watching the response of the insects and the animals that something huge was wrong, and that's when the industry started to do more clear cutting and spraying, and then there was more cars, that was being produced, and more carbons being produced, and so on. So and the weird thing is my grandfather quit school in grade 3. He couldn't read, he couldn't write, but man, he was the smartest man that I knew, because he knew how, how to live off the earth, and he knew how, how things were supposed to be in life and so on. So I thought I'd share those two little things with you.
It's interesting to me, the full moon in May, and I don't know if it's a cultural difference or if it's a change because of a change in climate or environment, but ever since I've been gardening, it's always been referred to as the full moon in June that you use to reference the planting date. Yeah, so that's interesting. And when you first started talking, Ron, you said that you don't consider yourself a gardener. And I think that there's, when we talk about food sovereignty, which we had a guest speaker on Tuesday as well, and we started having that discussion about what food sovereignty means, especially in contrast to food security. And so there is, it's not just a question of there being enough food, but having, participation in control of your food system and engagement with food. And it's, there's so much more to the culture of food than just, the physical production of it. There's so many roles in what the food system is. And I think that it's, it takes, just like, society and culture, it takes all kinds of people, it takes all kinds of roles to make a food system work. And I think it's becoming very obvious right now that our food system doesn't work for a lot of people. And so, having that realization and awareness is one thing, and then being able to engage with it and make positive change is another. So I was happy to hear you express that, because it does really bring to mind the idea that we don't all need to be growers. There's just so many different roles to be played to make things work.
Yes, and again, from my grandfather's teachings, and he used to talk to, and when I used to go back in his backyard and where his garden was, he was always talking to himself, which I thought he was talking to himself. But he had a family of groundhogs, like underneath his garage, his old garage, and he would be talking to them. So I said, I remember again, I'm thinking, he's my grandfather crazy? He's talking to these groundhogs. But and I remember I confronted him about that. I said, how come you're talking to groundhogs? He says, we all spoke the same language at one time. He says, we just forgot to listen, and we forgot that connection to all, to the animals. And he would talk to his garden. And I think it's, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's been proven scientifically, when you talk to your plants naturally react to your voice, whether you're singing to them, where you're giving them compassion and love, that they grow better. And same with water. Water has memory. And maybe, not maybe, but I think I would strongly suggest that if we start to plant there at Hayes Farm, is that part of this whole process is that connection, that sacredness to the plants that you put, or the seeds that you put into the earth, is that you speak to them. And there's this connection that you can make, that when you plant those seeds, that you have that connection, and that relationship with them. Same with when I was just online yesterday with a young woman from Maine whose who's like having a baby within the next couple of days, and the grandmothers who were on the Zoom talk with her says, you need to speak to your baby because he's still in that very delicate and sacred time within your womb. And when we plant the seeds in the earth, it's like planting that seed of life, that you have to talk to that as that plant grows and that birth comes, eventually comes out, out of that ground. That's the birth. So if it's, these are all like feminine teachings, which I should have a female talking about this stuff, but listening to them, how mothers connected to their fetus, and eventually as the fetus grows, is that they sing to it. They have that that cord that that's connected to them, that they take in the food, and it's like they're nourishing that seed, and what they take in, the good food, the good thoughts, and the good songs, and the loving voice, and that creates that wellness and that health of that child growing. Same with when you plant the seeds inside Mother Earth, is that's the same sort of relationship that we should have within that food that we grow, and having that relationship with it, and make let people think that we're crazy, but we need to speak to the earth, because we consider her as Mother Earth, because she provides everything that we need. Everything in our homes come from her. Whether it be the wood, or even the minerals that are created to make our televisions, lights, our furniture, all comes from the earth, our clothing. So she's a living, breathing thing that we have to again reconnect with her. So when we do, or when you do start to plant the seeds, or I don't know if they're planted yet, but I really urge you to have that personal relationship with that, and connect to it, because eventually it's going to grow, and it's going to feed somebody. So
Could you talk a little bit about giving thanks and giving offerings when you're harvesting medicines and foods? It's kind of like second nature to me. Like, I've always been told, like, give thanks and make an offering, but I think we can all benefit from hearing about that.
Yeah, well, like what we were taught is, like, when you plant food, or even when you go and pick food or medicine, you should always give something back to it, whether something natural, like tobacco. Like, we use a lot of tobacco, natural tobacco, to give to the earth, to thank her when we take something from her. You can give her a song. You can give her words of gratitude and appreciation. It doesn't have to be a physical thing. You can always give through your thoughts and through your words in gratitude, in what the earth's going to give you something back. So yeah, just to be thankful when you do the planting, and be in a very good space. I know when my mother used to cook, she always used to tell me, you should never cook nothing for the family or for people if you're in a bad mood, bad space, because you put that bad energy within your food. Same it when you work with the earth, when you plant, be in a very good place when you do that, because you're putting your whole self into the energy of planting and stuff. So
Do you know why it's tobacco? I mean, maybe there are other food crops or medicines or plants that are given as thanks, but that seems to be the one that at least I've heard of most prevalently being given. Do you know why it's tobacco?
well, tobacco was one of our first medicines that we used, and well, like the tobacco that we use today, to smoke and so on, is not the original tobacco that was from this land. We use like red willow to do smoke through our sacred pipes and so on, and we would shave the red willow inside the white part and dry it and so on. Like that was our natural tobacco here. Eventually, the tobacco seeds came up from the south here. As I said, our people traded years ago, so we probably received some tobacco seeds from down, southern part of our regions to plant here. But our original tobacco came from the red willow, and it's non-toxic and so on. And today we use knick, which is a mixture of red willow, mullein, bare root, and various different non-cancerous, non-toxic plants and so on. So the tobacco is one of our 4 medicines that we use to purify. We have sage, cedar, sweetgrass, and tobacco that we use in our mixtures. Sometimes we use them, in individually, or sometimes what I do is I grind them together and use them as a smudging to purify myself, in the morning and at night and so on. So possibly in the once you get on the land, if you want to invite me and Bev, Shara's mom, and we can come and do some a ceremony with you, and maybe smudge the land and smudge you all, and then for us to and for all of you to be in that good space when you start to work there and so on. Have you planted food yet, or?
We've started planting, but I mean, we would absolutely welcome that. That would be lovely. Whether it's now that we are starting to plant or when we start to do harvest, whatever makes the most sense. But absolutely, that would be lovely.
Yeah, I think it would be beneficial if we do it now, and then maybe halfway through the summer planting season, and then when you towards the end of the summer, we can go back again, because it's those stages that you have to honor, and our people had certain ceremonies that they would celebrate, and each time would be like planting season. The first time strawberries come out, different medicines and fruit that are processed and so on. So we can come out through the whole period and the time periods of how the plants are reacting to the earth and stuff. So yeah, and I'll get a hold of Bev to see if we can go up, and then we can have a distant smudge, and then we'll come around the area to smudge the area, the land, and we can sing some songs to it too, for the land and for the plants. Yeah. Just let us know when you want us to do that. We can. So. And we if you notice that we're almost completed longhouse there up on the top. We started that with the grade I think 3, 4s, and 5s last year, or was it 4, 5s, and 6s?
4, 5s, and 6s, yeah.
Yeah. So we didn't quite get it complete because the snow came a little bit like early in the cold weather. So we were going to finish it this spring, but here we are with the pandemic. So yeah. But the longhouse is a traditional and natural way of our governance, how we used to govern our people and stuff, and it's a very democratic process, how our people used to govern ourselves. The present chief and council system within our communities aren't really our way. It's kind of like the colonial way to govern our people. It's like a mayor and council and so on. So, but the longhouse is our traditional way of governing, because we had our own system where the clan mothers would pick their own leader for their clan, and then they would have a grand chief who would just sit there and listen to the issues and the concerns and the the views from each family. A clan is just simply a family. So that say that your clan, my clan would be, my family plus my siblings, and then my parents, my grandparents, and so on. That would be my clan. And then we would each have a clan system, and they would each have a sub chief that would represent them, and they would speak, at various periods, and they would be guided by the grandmothers and the women from their clan system. So the women would tell their sub chief what to say and what to present and so on. So that's is why we built that longhouse, to kind of reestablish and to teach the young people how our democratic system was, and we're trying to get that back and so on. So we have around 7 minutes, and I got to pee really soon.
Is there? Oh yeah, go ahead, String.
Chief, I just have one, maybe a stupid question. So when do you break your clan? I mean, like for instance, you and your brother, you will have will you be in the same clan, or I mean, when he has his own family, does he join the other clan? So how does that work?
No, if my brothers and sisters we're all one clan. Like I'm a through my mom's side we're Crow clan, and through my dad's side we're Wolf. But in our how our system works in our traditional process is that when you marry somebody, when the man marries the woman, the man has to go to the woman's clan. So I would sit with your partner's clan. So we would be there sitting with her clan. And this whole process of the clan system is that this only reaffirms that you can't marry within your own clan system. So you can't crossbreed. So you would always make sure that you didn't marry somebody within your own clan system. So, and that's why our bloodlines were so strong. So, and each clan would like there were the bird clans would all sit together, and there was they call them like the small paws, which is like a fox, muskrat. They would all sit in one section. Then the larger clans, like the bear clan, the Wolf clan would all sit in one section. So we would know who we can marry and who we can support within the traditional system and stuff. So to answer your question, all, because I have like nine siblings, we're all from the same clan, and I have cousins through the Sapir side. My first cousins, we would all be in that Crow clan. So we all represent them. So.
Thank you, Chief.
I just wanted to say thank you and Maliwan for everything that you shared with us. And I'm really looking forward to having you on the farm. I was partaking in, I think, Kyle, you know Kyle, he was doing a drum group at MWC, and I don't get to do that because of all this COVID. So I'm really excited that we can sing with you. Really looking forward to that.
Great, yeah.
Does anyone else have any last questions or thoughts?
I just want to say thank you again. It's always an honor to hear your stories and your teachings. We don't get too much of that around lately, so very nice. Thanks, Ron. Lehman.
All right, well, I guess we can wrap up, and I'll definitely echo that statement. And Willie, we'll really looking forward to having this group on the farm, and it's really nice to have you on so early in the year. And we'll be welcoming Cecilia and on farm to do some more teachings, and we'll definitely make sure to get you and Bev here. And did I hear you say, Ron, that Bev is Sierra's mom? Did I get that right?
Yeah.
Yeah, nice. Okay, making the connection.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
we're at the school there to we were working at the school. We still are kind of through virtually to pass on teachings to the students there.
Yeah, it's definitely less desirable to have to do these kind of interactions online, but I'm glad we've been able to make it work so far. Yeah, so we'll certainly reconnect soon. And we'll see all of you crew here on the farm around 12:30. All right. Thank you, everybody.
Hey, Faye. Thank you.